Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. Blizzard has been doing a lot of time walking stuff in the past few expansions where they bring back some of the dungeons as well as raids back to the forefront for us to re-experience it like we did back in the day. The biggest undertaking as of yet has been, without a doubt, the Mage Tower. The way that they have brought it back, the way they said certain limitations, and how the essence of the original experience is just as awesome as the first time we tried it back in Legion. Even though some of our classes are a little bit different, there is still that amazingness about it. And this made me wonder, what else could Blizzard bring back? World of Warcraft 3 expansions is full of treasure troves. There's a ton of fantastic content that we enjoyed back then, and I wonder if there's a couple of things that Blizzard could bring back that we used to enjoy back then with the time walking system to find and give us a reason to go back to that content and make it more or less relevant in whatever expansion we're currently in. There's just so much raw potential that's yet to be explored. But first, before we go on, most of you guys watching these videos are not subscribed. If you watch the videos on regular content and you enjoy it, you might as well hit subscribe as well as hit the bell, especially if you want more discussion videos like this on future potential stuff with World of Warcraft, or even just patch updates to keep you in the know of what's going on. The first items on my list were the easy ones. What are some of the newer expansion content that Blizzard has done just recently that they could maybe bring back to the forefront? The first thing I thought of were challenge mode dungeons. Warlords of Draenor and Mists of Pandaria both had challenge mode dungeons that are very similar to the Mythic Plus system and the scaling system that we have of current day WoW. And I feel like this is some of the best and easiest content that they could bring back. Challenge mode dungeons had the same thing as Mythic Pluses, a time trial where you have to slay a set amount of enemies and every one of the bosses. Using the M+ framework, I imagine it'd be pretty easy to bring that kind of content back, with every boss ability turned up to 11 or even given certain extra mechanics to make it more challenging. Similar to the Mage Tower, where these pieces of content award you with exclusive items, whether it's an exclusive set of gear that can no longer be obtained, or exclusive weapons with extra effects that also can no longer be obtained. What's also really cool about the challenge modes, like the Mage Tower, they came with their own cosmetics, either the armor pieces from Mists of Pandaria or unique weapons with flashy effects in Warlords of Draenor. But just like Mage Tower, they could use the same system of maybe taking certain tier sets or even certain themed gear sets from Mists of Pandaria area or Warlords of Draenor and giving us a recolor of sorts. Or maybe just something new in the theme of those expansions, not where you get exactly the same rewards, but something new like Mage Tower. Another idea I had is Mythic Plus dungeons. Since they're bringing back Legion Mythic Plus dungeons, I wonder if at some point they could bring back certain Battle for Azeroth Mythic Pluses for BFA time walking, but I also wonder if it's possible to reverse engineer this Mythic Plus system into older expansions. Like we mentioned earlier, Warlords of Draenor and Mists of Pandaria challenge modes are very similar and reminiscent to Mythic dungeons and even Mythic Plus scaling system. And I wonder if it's possible to eventually add a Mythic Plus version for Mists of Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor dungeons with proper scaling. Maybe even include other expansions that kind of work your way backwards towards older expansions and add Mythic Plus systems for those as well. Imagine if you could just get your Mythic Pluses done for Shadowlands dungeons, the same 8 dungeons we have today, but during time walking weeks, you could do some Wrath of Lich King dungeons with old school mechanics, scaling to the current Shadowlands affixes, maybe with its own affix of its own for Wrath of the Lich King era, and even scaling the content so it's replayable, challenging, but also rewards you quite a bit of gear. But what if we also did time walking raids, real scale time walking raids? Because we have time walking raids for TBC, as well as Wrath of Lich King, Cataclysm, and eventually Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, and other expansions. But what if they added a real challenge mode for those? Currently time walking, you can utilize legendaries and different items, sockets, Heart of Azeroth, the cloak from Battle for Azeroth, legendary quest line, in order to make your character super extra powerful in time walking experience. But what if they took the Mage Tower approach of disabling certain items in order to make this content challenging, and applying that towards certain older raids? Current time walking raids exist and they work pretty well. You can pug them for the most part, especially if you use some of the more overpowered items like Heart of Azeroth, the different essences, legendary items from older expansions, maybe items with multiple sockets, and certain trinkets that scale super well inside of time walking. Depending on your pug group, sometimes you'll be successful or less successful, depending if everybody knows the fights. The last time me and my guild have done a time walking raid, I think we did it just for fun, maybe to catch up with the gear for some of our old characters, but we did it just because we didn't have the main raid. We cleared out Mythic, we didn't have anything else to do that week, and we just kind of got together and just ran a time walking raid. It was fun and enjoyable, but in terms of getting gear and the challenge, Besides a few mechanics that gave us some trouble, it really wasn't much. The gear from it, of course, it's not amazing unless you were playing that character that you're catching up with. So what did they change the rule set to make it a bit more interesting? Like apply the Mage Tower Legion time walking rule set of trying to make our characters a little bit less powerful inside of time walking. No legendaries, none of that Heart of Azeroth stuff, none of the things that scale really weird, just your character scaled down to the content to make it as challenging as possible. Where the mechanics and bosses are now a bit of a threat instead of the tank being able to tank it forever because you got all these essences from that deck from Battle for Azeroth that keep cycling a variety of different shields. Now you actually have to worry about tank swaps, and you actually have to play the mechanics like you did back in the original days when you'd done this raid when it was current content. Make the bosses hit harder and mechanics a bit more challenging. However, adjust certain aspects like the fact that our healers can't just constantly dispel things, and some of the older expansions are set up with debuffs where healers are expected to be able to dispel every single global. So adjust the fights to be fair, but make them a bit challenging so they are quite tough. Maybe make them equivalents to, like, since we have 3 different levels of difficulty for raiding, we have the LFR, normal, heroic, and mythic, which is the hardest. What if these boss fights were turned up towards a equivalents of heroic from Sanctum of Domination, and maybe even make some of the gear rewards from those dungeons also scale upwards so they are a little bit better, maybe somewhere in between of like Sanctum of Domination normal and Sanctum of Domination heroic, where the content is challenging but the gear is actually worth the time spent. I feel like this would give so many guilds an opportunity to get more avenues to gear each other as a raid group, more activities for you to do as a 20 or 30 man roster, however many people you have in your raid. Or if you're one of those casual guilds that likes just to clear heroics, this will be something new for you to do depending on the time walking week, something different for you to clear. Older content that Blizzard made, recreated so they are usable in current environment and actually give you rewards that fuel the current version progression with the gear involved. It's cool to be able to go back to some of these awesome boss fights just to perform some transmog. Most bosses though are 2-shottable, 3-shottable, and to make some of these awesome fights and the mechanics resurface back for current endgame content with the time walking scaling system, I think would be awesome. I think there's a lot of potential that we just don't get to experience anymore, and to bring it back to the current version of the game, I think would really be fun. Besides that, I got to thinking about some of the other solo activities that Blizzard could return, like Mage Tower. It's a perfect bit of solo content that everybody is excited for, but is there other solo content that we used to do back in the day? Besides certain legendary quest lines, we have stuff like Chromie Time, which was added during Legion, or the Deaths of Chromie. I actually got to replay it through recently, and it already has some sort of scaling to it. Even though scaling very heavily favors the player for whatever cosmetics you want, it is scaled technically and it does exist. BFA brought Horrific Visions. However, looking back at BFA Horrific Visions, they were pretty horrific. A lot of people don't have a good memories of them, but there's also a pretty big lack of cosmetic rewards and reasons to do it. There were these masks that you could earn, but I think BFA left a pretty bad taste in many people's mouth, and might be a good idea just to wait until a few expansions to try this out later. The last bit of gameplay content that I could think of that isn't a dungeon, that isn't a raid, that's an organized thing, where you have mechanics and boss fights that could technically be scaled down, something that is still unique, that a lot of players were really fond of when it existed. The only thing I could think of is the Timeless Isle. Blizzard has been trying to recreate Timeless Isle time and time again, and there have been many different zones that play very similar to the Timeless Isle, but have never been able to capture the same charm, as it was their magnum opus of open world content. Timeless Isle was a secluded zone in Mists of Pandaria that was kind of like a zone stuck in time. It was just full of rares, treasures, secrets, basically everything that made every other side content good. It had treasures you wouldn't believe, hidden treasures where you had to solve certain secret puzzles before they would reveal themselves. Rares that wouldn't show up unless you did a very specific action, like went into like a spirit world or activated a key somewhere, and then a rare would pop up. They had a lot of elites in there and that could be farmable, so players spend quite a bit of time farming elites for resources or even certain rare drops. Farming elites also could activate a rare version of those mobs. So if you farmed a bunch of frogs, you could get an elite frog that was a rare that would spawn, and by killing it you can get a variety of different rewards. There was puzzles, jumping puzzles, rope puzzles, flying puzzles. There was even a NPC that would make you abandon your faction, attacking every player of Horde and Alliance, so you can get resources so you can buy stuff from him as well. This made me wonder if it's possible to maybe bring the Timeless Isle into the current version of the game. So since the Timeless Isle is a mysterious place that's kind of stuck in time, there's a lot of little time magic elements that could deal with it. Maybe during the Mists of Pandaria time walking, the island goes through some kind of a warp, and it now has a warped version that's available for our max level Shadowlands characters, alts and mains, where we go back to the same island, but now some things are different. Like the island maybe went forward in time or backwards in time, so the enemies we remember might be different. They might be affected in a variety of different ways. The way I imagine it is Timeless Isle, but with a bit of a spin. Every single rare, every single world boss, everything that's on the Timeless Isle has a bit of a different flavor to it, and giving players more of a reason again to go back to the islands, to farm some of the different treasures, fight some of the familiar yet different mobs and rares, and to have a familiar yet different experience on an island that many fondly remember. And I understand that this idea might be a bit of a stretch since Timeless Isle kind of came and went. I don't know how many people would want to go back to it, but I would love to see a reimagined version of this island and give us a reason to go back and farm some of the resources, and maybe even use it as an alternative way to gear our ults for a time. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. You let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think any of the ideas are good on paper? Maybe that's something that Blizzard should eventually bring back in the future WoW expansion updates. Or maybe there's something I missed that was just obvious, it was right in front of me, that maybe they should bring back some kind of content that I completely omitted in this video. Let me know all that in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another video.